It was supposed to be a regular day, but it quickly turned into something I never expected. Imagine this: you're locked out of your own property, and the very people you trust to help with your community are the ones keeping you from your own home. That's exactly what happened to me. It all started when the HOA, Homeowners Association, decided to step in and enforce some bizarre rules that didn't make any sense and seemed to target me specifically. But what they didn't know was that I'd been anticipating this move. You see, I had set up a gate, not just as a barrier, but as a trap. Not a dangerous one, but something that would catch them in their tracks if they ever thought about pulling something like this. So, when they locked me out, I realized I had a big problem on my hands. What I didn't know was that the tables were about to turn in a way that would leave the HOA speechless. Who's in control now? Who's really going to get trapped here? Stick around because you won't believe how this unfolds. The HOA thought they had the upper hand, but little did they know, I had a few tricks up my sleeve. Keep watching to find out what happened next. To understand how things got this far, you need to know a bit about my neighborhood and the HOA. It wasn't always this way. When I first moved in, the HOA seemed like just another part of suburban life, rules and regulations here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary. But over time, it started feeling like they were getting a little too involved. From the color of your mailbox to the height of your lawn, nothing was off limits. If you stepped even a little out of line, you'd get a letter in your mailbox. It got old fast. Then came the big issue, the gate. I'd installed it a few months back, not because I had anything to hide, but because I wanted more privacy. The gate was sturdy, secure, and for the most part, an added feature that made my property feel like, well, mine. But for the HOA, it was a problem. They didn't like the way it looked, the height of it, or that it wasn't part of their approved list of fences. So they started sending me warning after warning, telling me to take it down or face fines. But here's where it gets interesting. When I got that final letter, something in me snapped. I wasn't about to let some random people dictate what I could do on my own land. So I decided to fight back, but in a way they never saw coming. The tension started to escalate when the HOA brought in an inspector to evaluate my gate. It was a Friday afternoon, and I had just come home from work when I saw the HOA rep standing near my property, scribbling notes. I could feel my blood starting to boil. This was becoming more than just a petty issue, it felt personal. I knew the inspector wasn't there to just check things out. They were trying to find something, anything, to justify their demands. What really set me off was the way they spoke. They acted like they were doing me a favor by showing up, like I was the one causing trouble. The worst part, they'd taken photos of my gate, my yard, and even parts of my house that were clearly out of their jurisdiction. It was clear they were going to push this, no matter what. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about the gate anymore. It was about control. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules. They were making it clear that they could decide how I lived, down to the smallest detail. I wasn't the only one they had their eyes on either. Over the past few months, I'd been hearing whispers about other homeowners who were fed up with their demands. But none of them were willing to push back as hard as I was planning to. I started making some calls, talking to neighbors who felt similarly trapped. And that's when I learned a few things that made me even more determined. The HOA have been playing dirty behind the scenes. One neighbor, a retired lawyer, told me that they had a history of bullying residents, especially those who had more independent streaks. I wasn't the first to clash with them, but maybe I'd be the last. By the time they sent me another notice to remove the gate, I was ready to take action. But I had a bigger plan in mind now, something that would not only push back, but also expose the HOA for what they really were. A group of power-hungry individuals who thought they could control everything, even my freedom. As the days passed, my plan started to take shape. I knew the HOA would never back down, and at this point, neither would I. I had to hit them where it would hurt the most: public opinion. I couldn't let them keep bullying me, or anyone else for that matter. It wasn't just about the gate anymore. It was about standing up to an organization that thought it could control every aspect of our lives. I had one final move to make, and it wasn't something I could undo once I started. I spent nights poring over legal documents, trying to figure out any loophole or inconsistency in their own rules. The more I dug, the more I realized they had been operating with a lot of gray areas, things they could easily manipulate to their advantage. But I found something. A tiny but powerful detail buried deep in the HOA bylaws that said if a resident could prove the gate served a legitimate safety purpose, they would be exempt from removal. It wasn't much, but it was enough. So, I set my trap. I knew the HOA would send their people to inspect the gate again, probably this week. I wasn't sure exactly when, but I was ready. I made a few subtle changes to the area around the gate, some things that would make the inspector second-guess their approach. I also made sure to record everything, every interaction, every step they took. It wasn't just about me anymore, it was about sending a message. Then, the moment came. One afternoon, I saw the HOA car pull up at the end of my street. My heart started racing. This was it. I watched from the window as two inspectors made their way toward my property. They didn't know it yet, but they were walking into a situation they wouldn't be able to control. As they approached the gate, one of them started taking notes, their eyes scanning for any reason to issue another violation. But I knew something they didn't. The gate wasn't just a barrier, it was my shield. The moment they stepped too close, they would trigger something they never expected. I held my breath, waiting for them to make their move. Would they fall into the trap I had set, or would they outsmart me first? As the two inspectors inched closer to the gate, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. I had prepared for this moment, checked every angle, made sure everything was set. But then, just as they were about to cross the threshold of the gate, something unexpected happened. A third person appeared on the scene, someone I hadn't seen before. It was a man in a suit, walking briskly behind the inspectors. At first, I thought he might be a contractor or another HOA official, but something about him felt off. He wasn't part of the usual team. My gut told me this was no coincidence. As he approached, the inspectors immediately straightened up, almost like they were awaiting instructions. It was then that I realized they weren't just here to inspect my gate anymore. They were here for something much bigger. The man in the suit introduced himself as the HOA's legal consultant, a term I hadn't even known existed. He told the inspectors to stop taking notes, then turned toward the gate and started measuring the height, the materials, and even the space around it with a level of scrutiny I hadn't anticipated. I tried to stay calm, but inside, my mind was racing. Why was he here? What do they really want? Just as I was about to step outside to confront them, my phone buzzed. It was a text from one of my neighbors, the lawyer I'd been speaking to earlier. They're not just inspecting your gate. They've got a new rule coming through, a big one. If they win this, they'll be able to enforce even stricter rules across the entire neighborhood. Yours is just the first test. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was bigger than I could have imagined. They weren't just trying to tear down my gate. They were about to rewrite the rules entirely. And if I couldn't stop them, they would be in control of everyone in the neighborhood, controlling even more of our lives than before. The stakes had just skyrocketed. I couldn't let that happen. But what could I do? What if they already had everything set up to crush any resistance? I looked out the window again, the man in the suit still busy with his measurements, and felt the weight of everything coming down on me. Time was running out. As the inspectors and the legal consultant continued their detailed measurements, I felt the pressure mounting. I knew I had to act fast, but what could I do? The gate was set, and I had done everything. I watched them take notes, and then something caught my eye. The legal consultant was talking to the inspectors in hushed tones, pointing to the documents in his hand. I felt a chill run down my spine. They weren't just trying to fine me anymore. They were planning to sue me. They'd already set things in motion, filing paperwork that would force me to tear down the gate, with legal fees on top. It was a full-on attack, and I was about to lose everything. That's when I remembered something. I had been recording everything from the moment they showed up. Not just the photos, not just the moments of tension. I had everything. I had made sure that every word, every action was documented. The legal consultant was walking around my property, not realizing that the camera mounted above the gate was catching everything he said. It was subtle, but there it was. The moment he mentioned how they could legally force the homeowners to abide by new rules that hadn't even been voted on by the community. A slip-up, a huge one. I felt a surge of relief mixed with adrenaline. This wasn't just about me anymore. I now had proof that the HOA had been operating illegally, pushing through changes without proper approval, manipulating residents into following rules they hadn't even agreed to. I stepped outside, my heart pounding as I approached them. "I think you've got something you forgot to check," I said, walking toward the inspectors. They froze, clearly caught off guard by my sudden presence. The legal consultant turned, his face twisting in frustration. I didn't give them a chance to speak. "I have everything you said, every detail, every mistake. You're trying to push through new rules that aren't even legal. I'll be taking this to the press and to the courts, and believe me, you won't be able to touch anyone in this neighborhood again, not without a fight." The tension in the air was thick, but the look on their faces was priceless. They realized too late that they had underestimated me. But just as they started to back away, something happened. The neighbor I'd been talking to, the retired lawyer, walked up behind me with a few others who had been quietly watching from their windows. They'd been gathering, one by one, preparing for the moment I'd make my stand. And just when I thought the HOA would retreat, the unexpected happened. The consultant, seeing that he was surrounded, turned and handed me a small envelope. "You won," he said, his voice eerily calm. "But you're not the only one with secrets. This is just the beginning." I took the envelope, and as I opened it, I realized the twist. Inside was a letter from a local developer. The HOA had been secretly in talks to sell the entire neighborhood for a major redevelopment project. This battle over the gate, it was just a diversion, a way to push through new changes that would make the neighborhood more appealing to investors. Suddenly, everything clicked. The HOA wasn't just about controlling us, it was about making money off us, and they were willing to do whatever it took to get there. But with that letter in my hand, I knew one thing for sure: the real fight had just begun. And this time, the HOA wouldn't be the ones calling the shots.